Earthquakes tearing open the ground, seas rising, swallowing the shores, tsunamis towering to the sky, erasing entire cities in a single breath. Walls of stone, monuments of faith, all collapsing like fragile sandcastles. And yet there is one who holds such chaos in his hand, one who can unleash it or silence it whenever he chooses. That power has a name: Poseidon, Lord of the seas, breaker of the earth, the god whose fury no mortal can withstand. But Poseidon's rage was never limited to storms and quakes. His hatred reached deeper, toward his brothers, toward humanity, even toward the gods themselves. A hatred as deep as the ocean trenches, and as shattering as the quakes beneath our feet. Yet before he became the feared god of the sea, he was something far different. Once, Poseidon was nothing more than a helpless child, swallowed by his father's fear. Kronos, master of time, had heard a prophecy. One day his children would overthrow him. And so he greeted each newborn not with a father's embrace, but with a tyrant's cruelty. He did not cradle them. He did not raise them. He devoured them. Poseidon was among those children. Before he could breathe his first gasp of air, before his eyes ever opened to the light, he was swallowed into darkness, buried in the silent void of Kronos' belly, forgotten. The god who would one day rattle the earth was once a prisoner of silence, a forgotten child, lost in fear. But the children in Kronos' belly were not forgotten forever. For the youngest, Zeus, refused to surrender to fate. He grew in secret. He sharpened his strength. And when the time came, he rose against his father. With a storm of rebellion, Zeus forced Kronos to release his siblings. Poseidon emerged from the darkness, no longer an infant, but a god reborn in fury. He had entered the void as a victim, but he returned as a storm. Liberation was the beginning of chaos. The Titans fell, the cosmos reshaped itself, and so the brothers divided creation. Zeus claimed the sky, clouds, thunder, and the throne above. Hades claimed the underworld, the endless shadows, and the souls of the dead. And Poseidon was given the seas, and with them, the very foundation of the earth. He could summon waves to consume continents. He could stir the ground until cities collapsed into the dust. Every crack in the soil, every tremor in the land was his voice echoing through the world. Yet even this dominion did not satisfy him. For in Poseidon's heart burned an ambition not to rule only the seas, but to rule everything. The oceans, the earth, the sky. He wanted it all beneath his trident. And that trident was no ordinary weapon. Forged in the heart of the sea, shaped by the fire of quakes, it carried the weight not of iron, but of nature itself. No mortal, no god could bear its force. It was fated for Poseidon alone. When he struck the waters, oceans rose in towers of destruction. When he drove it into the land, mountains cracked and cities crumbled. The trident was more than a weapon. It was the symbol of a power that could unmake the world. And mortals knew this. They built temples to him, offered endless sacrifices. Before setting sail, no captain dared leave without invoking his name. Fishermen whispered prayers to calm the seas. But their worship was never born of love. It was born of fear. Because everyone knew, anger Poseidon, and the sea becomes your grave, the land your tomb. Athens was rising, a new city, awaiting its divine protector. The gods themselves would decide who would claim it. Poseidon came first, brimming with rage. He struck the earth with his trident, splitting stone and soil. From the crack, seawater gushed forth, salty and restless, flooding the land. "I give you the endless power of the seas," he thundered. Then came Athena, quiet and calm. She carried a small sapling in her hand, an olive tree. Its roots nourished the soil, its branches gave shade, and its fruit promised food and peace. The people hesitated, torn between raw force and quiet abundance. On one side, destructive might. On the other, harmony and survival. And in the end, they chose Athena. Athens would bear her name forever. At that moment, something fractured deep inside Poseidon. The seas belonged to him, the earth trembled at his command, but he had lost the hearts of mortals. For a god, no defeat was heavier. From then on, the shores of Athens knew no peace. Every wave that struck its walls carried the echo of Poseidon's fury. Every storm whispered his eternal anger. Athens had rejected him, and Poseidon never forgave. But his anger was not limited to cities. It guided his desires too. And one day, in Athena's sacred temple, he saw Medusa. Her beauty stoked his hunger, his recklessness. And in that holy place, Poseidon acted without restraint. Athena's rage was swift, yet the punishment fell not upon Poseidon, but on Medusa herself. Her radiant beauty twisted into horror. Her hair became snakes, her eyes cursed to turn all who looked upon them into stone. Thus began Medusa's tragedy. A story we have already told in full, a story that began with Poseidon's desire, and ended with a curse that haunted gods and mortals alike. But Poseidon was not only the bringer of curses, he also gave a gift that changed humanity forever. Striking the earth with his trident, he split the ground, and from the cracks emerged the first horses. Their manes flew like the wind, their hooves thundered like storms. They became the symbols of freedom and war, the companions of travelers, the engines of conquest. Humans reached distant lands, conquered kingdoms, all thanks to Poseidon's gift. Yet even this act of creation could not satisfy him. For Poseidon was a god who always craved more. That hunger drove him to rebellion. No longer content with seas and horses, he wanted Olympus itself. He joined Hera, Zeus's own wife, in a daring plot. Athena too stood by him, turning against the king of gods. Even without Hades, Poseidon believed victory was certain. The plan was bold. Zeus would be bound in chains, his throne destroyed, the heavens emptied of thunder. But destiny had other plans. The sea goddess Thetis intervened, freeing Zeus before the chains could hold. Lightning split the sky once more. The rebellion collapsed. Poseidon, the proud god of the seas, was forced to kneel. And Zeus, merciless in victory, chose not to strip him of power, but to break his pride. Banished to walk among mortals, Poseidon became a laborer. The mighty god carried stones, built walls, sweated beneath the sun. No temples, no prayers, only toil. For Poseidon, this punishment was more cruel than death, because for the god who once shook the earth, nothing was heavier than humiliation. For years, Poseidon toiled like a mortal, lifting stones, sweating under the sun. But he was never meant to remain ordinary. When his punishment ended, the trident returned to his hand, and in that moment, the seas swelled. Waves rose like mountains. From beneath the earth, a roar thundered as the ground shook. Gods and mortals alike knew Poseidon had returned. The master of the seas, the destroyer of earthquakes, reborn and more merciless than before. Yet his punishment was not fully over. Alongside Apollo, he was forced to build the walls of Troy. Stone by stone, they raised fortifications so strong that no army could breach them. And when the work was done, Poseidon demanded his reward. But King Laomedon defied him. He broke his oath, refusing payment to the gods. Poseidon's fury erupted once more. The seas roared in rage, the ground trembled in warning. For betrayal always carries a price, and no mortal escapes the wrath of a god. Time passed, but the wound remained. And when destiny brought forth the Trojan War, Poseidon's side was never in doubt. He joined the Greeks, spreading his seas before them, guiding their ships and striking Troy with storms. But he was not alone. Beside him stood Ares, the god of war himself. Together they became a devastating force, a tide of blood and steel crashing upon Troy. If you want to see Ares' fury in full, you can revisit the story we told of him earlier. For Poseidon, the war was not just about nations or glory. It was the long-awaited vengeance for Laomedon's betrayal. The walls he once built now shook with the power of his storms. But Troy was not the end of his fury, because soon his anger turned toward a single man, Odysseus. Poseidon's son, the Cyclops Polyphemus, was deceived with wine and blinded by Odysseus's cunning. For the sea god, this was no ordinary insult. It was a wound carved into his bloodline. From that day, Poseidon swore Odysseus would never see his home easily again. Every voyage turned into torment. Every wave rose against him. Ships shattered, comrades drowned, and years of wandering followed. Odysseus's story became less a tale of triumph and more a punishment written by Poseidon's relentless wrath. Yet Poseidon's anger was not reserved for heroes alone. He demanded respect from all mortals. Cities that neglected his temples, kings who broke promises, people who forgot sacrifices, all felt his vengeance. Storms swept coasts into the sea. The ground split open and swallowed homes whole. His curses struck swiftly, mercilessly. Mortals prayed his name in every storm, but their prayers carried only fear, never love. Even among gods, Poseidon was restless. He sided with Hera's plots, sometimes with Athena's schemes. But his loyalties never lasted. His anger rose and fell like the tides. One moment he stood as an ally, the next as a rival. On Olympus he was respected for his power, but no god truly trusted him. And always there was the shadow of Zeus. Poseidon's storms challenged the skies. Zeus's thunder split the seas. Their rivalry was constant, invisible, inevitable. Yet in every clash, Poseidon remained in his brother's shadow, and beneath them both loomed Hades, silent, feared, unyielding. The god of the underworld needed no storms, no thunder. His very silence was terror enough. You can hear more of that story in the Hades chapter we told earlier. Poseidon, meanwhile, carried a dual nature. The same god who struck the earth and gifted mankind with horses, symbols of freedom, speed, and power, was also the god who brought ruin, drowning cities and burying them in quakes. He was savior and executioner, father and destroyer, and no mortal ever knew which face they would meet. Even now, when the seas rise and storms devour the horizon, when the earth rumbles and cracks beneath our feet, people call it nature. But listen closer. Every storm bears his breath. Every earthquake carries his anger. Poseidon has not vanished. His wrath never faded. And one day, if the seas swallow the land or the ground shatters beneath your steps, remember this: Poseidon is still angry.